When Daniel was a child, his father used to wake him up before sunrise. "Come on," his father would whisper, shaking his shoulder gently. Dreams don't wait. They would sit on the front steps of their small house in a quiet town in England, watching the sky slowly change colors. His father worked long hours as a mechanic, his hands always stained with oil, but his voice was full of hope. One day, his father said often, "You'll have a life bigger than this. Just promise me you won't give up when it gets hard." Daniel always nodded. Promises were easy when you were young. As Daniel grew older, life became louder. School turned into pressure. Pressure turned into ambition. Ambition turned into distance. University took him to London. Then came long nights, unpaid internships, rejection emails, and silent failures. Every time his father called, Daniel answered with confidence he didn't feel. "I'm doing great, Dad," he'd say. "Everything's on track." But it wasn't. At 29, Daniel was living in a tiny apartment, drowning in self-doubt. Friends were buying houses, getting married, moving forward. Daniel felt stuck, too tired to chase his dreams, too proud to admit defeat. His father still called every Sunday. "Just checking in," he'd say. "Remember what you promised me?" Daniel smiled, forcing optimism. I remember. One winter evening, Daniel came home to a dark apartment and a blinking voicemail notification. It was his mother. "Call me when you get this," she said softly. The next call changed everything. "Your dad collapsed at work," she said. "They're taking him to the hospital." Daniel's chest tightened as the city lights blurred past the taxi window. For the first time in years, nothing else mattered. At the hospital, his father looked smaller, weaker. The strong hands that once lifted engines now trembled slightly. "You came," his father whispered, smiling faintly. "Of course," Daniel said, gripping his hand. "I'm here." They talked through the night, about childhood memories, about mistakes, about fear. "I was afraid I disappointed you," Daniel admitted quietly. His father shook his head. "I was never disappointed. I was just worried you stopped believing in yourself." Before Daniel left that morning, his father squeezed his hand. "No matter what happens," he said, "don't live a life you need to escape from." 2 weeks later, his father passed away peacefully in his sleep. At the funeral, Daniel felt an emptiness he couldn't explain, not just grief, but regret. Not for failure, but for hesitation. In his father's toolbox, Daniel found a folded piece of paper. His handwriting was shaky but clear. "Dreams don't need perfection. They need courage. Finish what you start." That note became Daniel's turning point. He quit the job he hated. Started small, failed again and again. But this time he didn't run. He worked nights, learned new skills, asked for help, took risks he once feared. Years later, Daniel stood on a small stage, holding an award for a project he once thought impossible. The applause was loud, but his thoughts were quiet. He looked up and whispered, "I kept my promise." And for the first time in his life, he believed it.